Hello. My name is Briar. I planned the family reunion, reserved the cabin, paid the deposit, sent the dates. But when I asked about the final details, my sister looked at me and said, "You're not invited. This is for real family." And everyone laughed. That wasn't the first time they'd left me out. But this time, they didn't just exclude me. They used my name, opened a credit card in it, charged jewelry, all while pretending I didn't exist. So I smiled, walked away from that dinner table, and slowly, one document at a time, I took everything back. They thought I'd stay quiet. But how long can someone stay silent while their own family deletes them, piece by piece? What would you have done? The night started like every other family dinner, warm lights, chatter filling the house, the faint scent of rosemary chicken coming from the kitchen. My mother, Vera, always hosted dinners as if the president might show up, polishing the same silver set she'd owned since before I was born. I stood at the door with a bottle of red wine tucked under my arm, smiling, even though I already knew this wouldn't end well. I told myself it was habit. You show up, you bring wine, you pretend everything's fine. That's how family works, or at least that's how ours did. Inside, the table gleamed. My father, Harlan, sat at the end, half listening to the conversation, his hands folded over his stomach. Isolde, my sister, had her phone face up beside her plate like she was waiting for someone more interesting to text. Her boyfriend, Quentin, smiled too easily, the kind of man who never wanted to pick sides. I slipped into my seat and placed the wine beside the breadbasket. "Figured this would go well with dinner," I said. "Oh, you didn't have to," my mother replied without looking up. She said that every time, and every time she let me bring it anyway. For a while, it was quiet, the clinking of silverware, a few jokes about politics, a comment about how early the snow came this year. It almost felt like peace, the kind that only comes right before something cracks. I was the one who cracked it. "So," I began, spearing a piece of broccoli, "have we settled on dates for the reunion?" The question hung in the air, longer than it should have. My sister didn't even blink. She leaned back, her lips curling into that half-smile she wore when she wanted to hurt without looking cruel. "You're not invited," she said lightly. "It's for real family." Everyone laughed, not the nervous kind, the real kind. My mother chuckled softly into her napkin. My father exhaled through his nose, a sound between a laugh and a grunt. Quentin looked around the table, unsure, then joined in because silence would have made him complicit. I felt my face warm, but I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. I just smiled like I understood the joke, though I didn't. When the laughter died down, I looked directly at my father. "Dad," I said calmly, "remember the credit card under my name?" He froze. His fork hovered midair. Then slowly, he set it down and stared at his plate. The room shifted. The laughter stopped, the air went thin. The sound of the refrigerator humming in the next room suddenly louder than everything else. No one said a word. I waited, giving them a chance to recover, to pretend it was all just a misunderstanding. But no one spoke. Not my mother, who always filled silence with polite words. Not my sister, who usually couldn't stand a moment that didn't orbit around her. Not even my father. He just kept his eyes on the food. I nodded once, more to myself than to them. "Got it," I said softly, and reached for my glass of water. My hand was steady. The conversation limped on after that, like a bird with a broken wing. Isolde made some small talk about a coworker's promotion. Vera complimented her own casserole. Quentin laughed at all the wrong moments. I ate in silence, each bite tasting like cardboard. By the time dessert came out, a store-bought pie Vera pretended she baked, I couldn't taste anything but the metallic tang of resentment in my mouth. I thought of every time I had bailed one of them out, every late-night phone call about a little help until payday, every time I'd said yes when I should have said nothing at all. It wasn't about the money. It was about the quiet assumption that I'd always be there, invisible until needed. I watched them pass the pie around, laughing again, pretending the earlier exchange never happened. Maybe for them it already didn't, but for me, that moment rewrote everything. I folded my napkin and placed it carefully beside my plate. My mother glanced up. "Leaving already?" "I have an early morning," I said. You always do, Isolde murmured, slicing another piece of pie. I smiled. Yeah, some of us have to. Then I stood, grabbed my coat from the back of the chair, and took one last look at the table, at the people who shared my face, my blood, and nothing else. No one asked me to stay. I walked through the living room, past the photos of birthdays and holidays that lined the walls. In each one, someone was always at the center. And it was never me. The front door clicked softly behind me. Outside, the evening air felt colder than it should have for spring. I paused on the porch, breathing it in until my lungs burned. Maybe they'd think I was being dramatic. Maybe tomorrow someone would send a text pretending to smooth things over. But I already knew better. That dinner wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was a declaration, and I'd finally heard it loud and clear. That was the last time I ever showed up with wine and hope. But it wasn't the first time I had been made invisible in my own family. That dinner was just the latest reminder in a long line of quiet exclusions. Only this one had an audience. And laughter. The morning after, I woke up to the sun already peeking through my blinds. I didn't bother making coffee. My stomach still turned from the meal I barely touched the night before. I opened my laptop out of habit, not for work, but for something more personal. The group chat. I had created it months ago, titled Lennox Family Reunion. I had picked a cabin up in Lake Geneva, halfway for everyone, scenic, affordable, private. I laid out the dates, the food rotation, even a schedule for who'd bring what. I followed up once, then twice. Nothing. Just a thumbs-up emoji from my mother Vera, a full day later, not even a word. Isolde had read the messages. I could see the gray check marks. But not a single reply. Back then, I had rationalized it. Maybe they were busy. Maybe I was trying too hard. I blamed myself before I even considered the possibility of being shut out. Now I saw it for what it was. The beginning of the end. And like most betrayals, it was dressed in silence. I closed the chat window. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from a neighbor, Beth, who I knew from the local community center. Nothing dramatic, just a "saw this and thought of you," with a link to a Facebook post. Curious, I clicked it. It was a photo posted by Vera just last week, a family birthday celebration for my cousin. Everyone was there. The long dining table at my parents' house, my sister's perfectly curled hair, the same silverware we always used for special occasions. I remembered that photo because I was in it. I had taken it, in fact, but in this version, I was gone, cropped out, cleanly, deliberately. The caption read, "Just us, real family." I sat staring at my screen so long that the backlight dimmed. It wasn't rage that I felt. It was confirmation. Concrete proof that I wasn't just imagining things, that I wasn't being sensitive. They were rewriting the narrative, scrubbing me out of their lives like I'd never existed, like I hadn't driven Isolde to her last surgery, like I hadn't paid off the balance when Dad missed a mortgage payment, like I hadn't sat with Mom until 2 a.m. while she cried after one of her fights with Harlan. I didn't save the photo. I didn't reply to Beth. I simply opened the family group chat, scrolled to the top, and tapped Delete Conversation. No hesitation, no drama, just gone. That night, after making myself a bland grilled cheese that I barely tasted, I pulled out the brown folder I kept in the back of my home office drawer. I hadn't touched it in a while. Inside were receipts, actual ones, but also emotional markers I had kept quietly for years. There was the invoice for Lyora's dental emergency. I had paid the clinic directly because she couldn't cover it, and no one else stepped in. A Venmo record for Isolde's flight to a women's conference. She had told everyone it was sponsored. It wasn't. A check I wrote to the mechanic who fixed Dad's brakes. He told me not to tell anyone. "It'll embarrass your old man," he'd said. I had documented it all, not because I wanted credit, but because I knew they'd forget. Or pretend to. Looking through those papers, I didn't feel generous. I felt used. It wasn't just about being excluded from a trip. It was about being erased by people who took everything I gave and then pretended I was never there. I got up and walked into the kitchen. The bottle of wine I had brought to the dinner still sat in the brown paper bag on the counter. I hadn't even unpacked it. I removed it now, looked at the label, then turned it around so the front faced the wall. That felt right. I wasn't pouring into that table anymore. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying Isolde's words, "You're not invited. It's for real family." The way she smiled like she had rehearsed it, like it was meant to wound. The next morning, I logged into the emergency account I had opened when Mom was recovering from her knee surgery. The one I kept funding without asking questions. My name was the only one on it, though everyone knew they could borrow from it. A pending charge caught my eye. It wasn't small. Diamond Touch Jewelry. $1,150. The charge had been authorized but not yet posted. The billing address? My parents' home. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, not with surprise but with the bitter sense of familiarity. They were still using me, even now. I closed the laptop slowly, like shutting a door I knew I wouldn't open the same way again. There was no more room for hope, but there was plenty of space left for truth. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. Not again. I'd spent too many years pretending that silence meant peace, that avoidance was forgiveness. But now, sitting in my small kitchen with a cup of cold coffee and the laptop screen glowing back at me, I knew better. The jewelry charge was still there, taunting me. $1,950 at Diamond Touch Jewelry. I knew that store. It sat in a plaza near my parents' neighborhood. I'd passed it dozens of times. The billing address confirmed it. Their house. Same script. Different day. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was the entitlement, the certainty that I would clean up the mess and stay quiet. I opened my Notes app, typing the words, "freeze account," before I lost my nerve. Then I clicked the button, confirmed twice, and stared at the screen until it showed account frozen, pending verification. I took a screenshot and saved it to a new folder on my desktop. I named it Just in Case. For a moment, I sat there, my hand still on the mouse, remembering how that phrase used to mean something else. Growing up, Mom always said, "Keep an umbrella in the car, just in case," or "Bring a sweater, just in case it gets cold." It used to be about care. Now it meant protection. From them. When I was 9, Isolde and I were close. Or maybe I just thought we were. She was 6 years older, already in high school, tall, confident, adored by everyone. I followed her like a shadow. One summer, before a neighborhood barbecue, she knelt beside me and said, "No matter what, I'll always have your back." I believed her. That night, I wore the matching pink dress she picked out. But when we got to the barbecue, she walked ahead, laughing with her friends, pretending she didn't know me. I called her name once. She didn't turn around. I remember standing there holding a paper plate, watching her pretend she didn't have a little sister. It was the first time I realized love could be conditional, and that I didn't always meet the conditions. Back in the present, I closed my eyes and inhaled slowly. The same feeling washed over me. Familiar, but duller now, worn down from repetition. I wasn't a little girl with a paper plate anymore. I was a woman who had financed half of their lives, and somehow I was still the one who didn't belong. I opened my phone and scrolled to my messages. The family chat was gone, but I had another thread, one with Leora, the quiet one, the one who usually stayed out of everything. I typed, "Did you know Mom was planning something big this month?" I waited, 10 minutes, nothing. I watched the typing bubble appear, then vanish. Another minute passed, then the chat showed. Leora left the conversation. That was answer enough. The afternoon slipped by, gray clouds rolling in over the neighborhood. I tried to focus on work, but every email blurred together. By sunset, I found myself walking through my small living room, pacing like a lawyer preparing for a case that hadn't even been filed yet. At 6, I finally picked up my phone and called the number listed on Diamond Touch Jewelry's website. The clerk answered with a polite voice that felt too bright for what I was about to ask. "Hi, this is Briar Lennox. I just need to verify a purchase made yesterday," I said, steady and calm. "Sure," she replied. "Can I get the order number or the name on the account?" "The name should be mine," I said, "but I didn't make the purchase." A pause, then the sound of keys tapping. "Okay, yes, we do have an order for a necklace. White gold, custom engraving, shipping address. Looks like, the same as billing." Lenox Drive, Naperville. My breath hitched, but my voice didn't. And who made the purchase? There was another pause, the kind where you know the answer before it's spoken. It says, Vera Lennox. Of course it did. Just to confirm, I said, the account name on the purchase was Briar C. Lennox? Yes, ma'am, she replied. I almost laughed, but it came out as an exhale. Would you be able to email me the receipt? Sure thing, she said brightly. What's the best email for you? I gave it to her, thanked her politely, and ended the call. For a few seconds, I stood there in the quiet, staring at my reflection in the kitchen window. The woman looking back at me didn't look angry. She looked tired, exhausted, really, but there was something new in her face. Resolve. They'd crossed the line again, but this time, they wouldn't walk away unscathed. I reached for my notebook and began jotting down a list. Not a to-do list, more like an accounting of reality. Every dollar, every favor, every just this once. I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with it, but I knew it mattered. The sound of rain started against the windows, soft at first, then steady. I opened the email inbox and saw it arrive, the receipt from the jewelry store. Subject line, order confirmation, diamond touch jewelry. I clicked it open. The necklace description read, custom piece, for Vera, with love. Love, charged to me. My jaw tightened. I saved the file to just in case. Then I closed the laptop and sat in silence as the rain tapped harder on the glass. Some people burn bridges. Others quietly drain the river beneath them. I didn't need to shout. They would feel the drought soon enough, because I'm about to return the favor, with interest. That thought stayed with me long after I ended the call with the jewelry clerk. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't even tell anyone. I just walked to the kitchen, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and opened my laptop. The browser still had the rental site open. The same cabin I'd reserved weeks ago. Sleeps 10, lakefront view. Pet-friendly. Perfect for the family reunion I would no longer be attending. Or funding. Click, cancel reservation. Click, confirm refund. Click, done. Within seconds, a message popped up in my inbox. Refund initiated. $750 will be returned to your original payment method. I took a screenshot, opened the family group chat, which had been suspiciously silent since dinner, and attached the image. No explanation, no emoji, just 6 words typed beneath it. Cancelled. Must be that real family policy. I shut the laptop and waited. Nothing. 2 hours passed. Still nothing. Then, a buzz from my phone. Mom. Then 3 messages in a row from her. Vera. What is this? Why did you cancel the cabin? Call me now. I didn't. Next came a text from Isolde. Isolde. Was that really necessary? I read it, let it sit for a moment, then replied. Me. Was the dinner? No response. I figured that was the end of it for the night. But the next morning, as I scrolled through messages over my toast, another ping caught my eye. It was from my cousin Erin, thanking me for the beautiful watch. Erin. Seriously, thank you. The whole family chipped in. I love it. You're all so thoughtful. The watch? I had paid for it. Vera had asked if I could handle it this year because things were tight. I said yes. I checked the post Erin tagged everyone in. Isolde was standing next to her, handing her the gift with a big smile. The tag on the box read, From all of us. I opened Venmo. The $480 I sent a week ago was still sitting in pending. No one had reimbursed me. I didn't text Isolde this time. I simply replied to her last message, the one about whether my cancellation was necessary. Me. Keep the watch, keep the necklace, just don't keep pretending I don't notice. There was no read receipt. She didn't respond. By lunchtime, I had stopped waiting for one. In the quiet of the afternoon, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table again, my old legal pad open in front of me, pen in hand. I wasn't scribbling out a plan for revenge. I was writing what I remembered. Mom's dental surgery, $3,200, fully paid. Leora's last-minute rent when she got laid off, $750. Isolde's conference flight, $320. The numbers weren't exact, but they were close enough. There were more. A lot more. As I wrote, the emotion behind each entry felt different. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was something else. Like watching a house burn that you already moved out of. It wasn't revenge I was after. It was acknowledgement. A simple, honest look in my direction that said, "You mattered. We saw you." But if they weren't going to offer that, I'd make sure they felt the weight of my absence. That evening, I made myself dinner. Just spaghetti with garlic and olive oil. Simple. Enough. I didn't open the wine this time either. Instead, I stood at the cupboard, pulled out the box labeled Family Receipts, and placed my notebook on top. Inside the box were printouts, emails from over the years confirming payments, messages where they asked for help, bank records, screenshots, even a notarized letter from a time Mom needed my name to co-sign something. "Just temporarily," she said. I never saw the papers again. I sat down with the box in my lap and opened it slowly, like I was sifting through another lifetime. In a way, I was. Some people write memoirs, others collect evidence. And me, I did both. It was time to remind them who'd been paying the bills. And this time, I wasn't just asking questions, I was giving answers. That thought stayed with me as I moved through the house. I didn't bother finishing my coffee. I went straight to the drawer where I kept the folder, the one marked in plain ink, no label fancy enough to call attention, just facts, receipts, names, dates. Every time they borrowed and forgot, I remembered. By the time I returned to the living room, a cool spring breeze was filtering in through the open window, the kind of breeze that always made the old wooden floors creak faintly under your steps. I sat down, flipping through the printouts, not to wallow, just to remind myself this wasn't overthinking, it was reality. And I was done pretending otherwise. I was still at the dining table, sorting documents into stacks, when it started. A sharp knock at the door, not the polite kind, the kind you feel in your chest. I didn't move right away. The second knock was faster, louder. I grabbed my phone, opened the security cam app. There they were, my father, Harlan, at the front, jaw clenched, my mother, Vera, behind him, arms crossed and face stiff, and Isolde, leaning against the porch rail like she owned the place. I stood, slowly, walked to the front door. I didn't open it wide. Just enough for them to see my face, and not enough for them to step through. "What's going on, Briar?" my father snapped. "You froze the account. You think that's funny?" His voice didn't shake. That's what made it worse. He wasn't panicking. He was entitled. Behind him, Vera didn't speak. She just stared, lips pressed together like she was suppressing some self-righteous monologue. Isolde didn't even flinch. She smirked like she was watching someone lose a debate she didn't have to join. I stepped back without a word and reached for the manila folder on the entryway table. When I returned, I held it in both hands like an offering I'd been waiting years to make. I flipped it open, took out a printed credit card statement, and slid it through the crack in the door. "Take a look," I said calmly. "It's under my name. That's your signature." Harlan didn't take it right away. When he finally did, his eyes moved down the page, but he said nothing. Vera's eyes flickered. Her voice was low. "Briar, you're blowing this out of proportion. That was years ago." "And I kept quiet for years," I interrupted, firm. 3 to be exact, while the charges stacked up under my name, while you all laughed and toasted and bought each other gifts using money I didn't authorize. Isolde tilted her head, her voice syrupy and mocking. "You're acting like some TV drama lawyer." I smiled at her. Not kindly. "That's funny, because all I see are crimes, with receipts." No one spoke for a moment. The air felt still, like the pause before a storm. Then I stepped fully into the doorway, not blocking it, but claiming it. "If you try me again," I said clearly, "I'll press charges. On all of it. The fraud, the harassment, the identity theft." Vera blinked, finally speaking. "You're talking like we're strangers, like we're criminals." "You're not strangers," I said. "That's what makes it worse." I started to close the door. Harlan reached forward, not forcefully, but reflexively. I didn't flinch. "This is your last warning," I said. I shut the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't lock it aggressively. I just turned and walked away. My hands shook, Not from fear, from adrenaline. But I didn't cry. Not this time. I sat down at the kitchen table, took a deep breath, and looked at the folder still sitting open in front of me. They didn't expect me to remember. They forgot that I was always the one who listened, always the one who wrote things down, always the one who nodded and smiled while they counted on my silence. But silence wasn't free. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, their car sat in the driveway. They hadn't left yet, probably still debating whether to come back and try again. That's when my phone buzzed. I reached for it on instinct. A notification from my bank's security system lit up the screen. Unrecognized login attempt on your financial portal. Location, Naperville, ill. Device, unknown. I stared at the screen. They weren't just retreating, they were retaliating. This wasn't desperation, it was declaration. They were fighting back, and now so was I. I didn't even flinch as I read the security alert. The notification sat there, cold and clear. Unrecognized login attempt. Origin, Lenox Drive. My parents' house. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then, with the kind of precision that only comes from years of watching people manipulate reality, I got to work. I opened every financial app and changed every password. Not just the emergency account, but savings, checking, even my tax portal. I flagged their address with every institution I had accounts with. Added two-factor authentication. Scanned for unknown devices. When I finally looked up, the sun had already shifted across the kitchen floor. The house had fallen into a quiet stillness that wasn't peaceful, just purposeful. I wasn't just protecting my money anymore, I was protecting myself. I called Nate, an old law school friend turned estate attorney, and gave him a rundown. His silence on the other end said enough. When I mentioned I had receipts, he responded with 3 words. Email them, today. After forwarding everything, I stepped outside to breathe for a moment. I hadn't planned on bumping into anyone, but there she was, Mrs. Elkins, the neighbor across the street who always waved too long and asked too many questions. She was standing at the edge of her walkway, holding a basket of laundry like a character from a Hallmark movie. "Briar?" she said gently. "Everything all right?" I nodded once, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Just handling a few things." She hesitated. Then she stepped closer. "Your mother stopped by church last night. She asked the prayer group to keep you in their thoughts." I blinked. "She said you've been going through something, that you might be making decisions out of emotion." There it was, the campaign. Not a frontal attack, just the kind that whispers behind your back. Mrs. Elkins handed me a folded bulletin. She didn't say much, just that you were distancing yourself. She said she was worried. I took the bulletin, nodded again. "Thanks, Mrs. Elkins." Back inside, I unfolded it. There it was, in black and white under the Community Concerns section. "Please pray for Briar Lennox. She's lost her way." The bile rose in my throat. I wasn't shocked, just impressed by how well Vera played the victim. I placed the bulletin on the counter and sat down again. The smear campaign had begun, and I hadn't even fired the first real shot, until now. My phone lit up with a new message. "Quentin." I hadn't expected that. It was a video link, no caption. I hesitated, then hit play. A family tribute video. A slideshow set to soft piano music. Photos of childhood birthdays, graduations, family vacations. I knew the pictures well. I had taken half of them. Names were read aloud by someone off camera, probably Vera. "To our roots, our legacy. Isolde, Harlan, Leora, Aunt Marla, Uncle Greg." But never mine. And then it happened. A family photo flashed on screen. One I remembered vividly. I had been standing on the far right, holding a tray of lemonade. In this version, I was gone. Clean crop. Perfectly edited. I paused the video, rewound, and watched it again. They didn't just forget me, they erased me. For the first time in this entire ordeal, my hands didn't shake. I opened Instagram, uploaded the full clip, unedited, no music stripped out, and wrote a single caption. "You can't delete people who built the foundation." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. Within an hour, the views began climbing. Then the messages started rolling in. I had no idea it was this bad. Wait, your mom posted that video? I thought you were in it. Your family made it seem like you didn't want to be involved. Truth has a way of sounding louder when it's not screamed. I let the post live quietly overnight. By morning, it had been shared by 3 friends. One had written, "This is why silence is dangerous. Believe people when they say their families aren't safe." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Later that evening, I stood by the window again, watching the porch light across the street flicker on. For a moment, I wondered if Vera was standing at her window too, watching the same dusk settle across the neighborhood, but I knew she wouldn't. She was too busy rewriting history. That's when my phone buzzed again. A message from Grandpa Clive. Short, uncomplicated. "Enough is enough. I'm coming over." And when he walked through the door, everything changed. I had been sitting at the kitchen table for hours. The laptop open to the video post that had now spread further than I intended. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint rain outside. I was rereading comments, people I hadn't spoken to in years, reaching out in disbelief or quiet support. I didn't know what I expected, but not this. Not validation. Then the front door opened without a knock. Grandpa Clive stepped inside like he'd been doing it all his life. He didn't ask permission. He didn't need to. He was the only one left who never asked what was convenient before showing up. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him, the winter light cutting across his face in fine lines. But his eyes, sharp, blue, unflinching, were exactly the same. "I saw the video," he said simply, closing the door behind him. "You're not wrong. I'm on your side." That was all he said, but the way he said it felt like oxygen. He didn't hug me. He didn't need to. He sat down across the table, the wooden chair creaking under his weight, and glanced at the piles of papers and receipts I'd been sorting for days. He gave a small nod, not of surprise, but of understanding. "You've been doing their work for years, haven't you?" I smiled faintly. It started to feel like a second job, just without the paycheck. He grunted, a low sound of disapproval, though not at me. "Your teacher called me once, years ago. Said you were always late to class, bringing your mother food, running her errands. You never told me that." I blinked. "She called you?" "She did," he said, leaning back. "Said you never complained. You never made excuses. I told her you were dependable, maybe too dependable." I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "You were doing their job," he said quietly. "Even then." Something in my chest loosened. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. The rain outside picked up, tapping harder against the kitchen window. Grandpa looked out for a moment, then back at me. "You've carried them long enough. Let them walk on their own, even if they fall." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A new message. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another distant relative commenting on the post, but the name stopped me. Evan. My ex. I opened it cautiously. I saw the clip. "I remember now how many times you skipped dinner with me because someone needed a ride. How often you canceled plans to help your family. You gave everything to them." Then another line. "I'm sorry I didn't understand what you were carrying." I stared at the words, the glow of the screen reflecting in the dark kitchen. I didn't reply. I just read it once, twice, then a third time. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about recognition. Finally, from someone who had watched me drown and never noticed the water rising. When I looked up again, Grandpa was studying me. "You all right?" "Yeah," I said softly. "Just surprised people are finally seeing it." He nodded, then stood, stretching his back slowly. "Good. You deserve to be seen." We sat there in a comfortable quiet for a while, until headlights swept across the living room wall. I frowned, standing. "That's them." Grandpa followed my gaze. A car door slammed outside. Then another. Then the unmistakable rhythm of my mother's heels against the pavement. Vera didn't knock this time. She opened the door halfway before Grandpa reached it first. He stood in the doorway like a wall. "You don't come into this house uninvited," he said. His tone wasn't loud, but it filled the room. Behind her, Harlan hovered awkwardly near the porch light. Isolde crossed her arms, glaring at me over Vera's shoulder. "Dad?" Vera started, voice trembling with practiced fragility. "She's tearing this family apart, posting things, turning people against us." Clive cut her off. "You did that yourself." "Excuse me?" Isolde snapped. "You've manipulated her long enough," he said, his voice steady as stone. "She's not your bank. She's not your burden. She's the only one who ever showed up when you didn't." The words hit like a slap. Even Harlan flinched. Vera's eyes filled with tears, but they stayed dry, like someone who had learned to cry on command. "Dad, please." "Oh, you don't understand what she's done." "I understand perfectly," he said. "And I'm not here to debate. I'm here to draw a line." No one moved. The only sound was the rain still beating against the house. Isolde tried again, her tone sharp. "You think she's innocent? She's been poisoning everyone against us for years." Grandpa turned to her, eyes narrowing. "The only thing you should say is thank you and goodbye." For once, she didn't have a comeback. Vera's shoulders shook, but no one reached for her, not even Harlan. He looked at me briefly, guilt flickering for just a second, before turning away. It was over faster than I expected. No shouting, no dramatic exits, just the sound of the door closing, the air lighter than it had been in years. Grandpa turned back toward me and opened the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a small envelope, slightly worn around the edges, and handed it to me. "This is for you," he said. I took it carefully. The handwriting on the front was his. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a copy of his will, and a note written in his familiar, steady script. "The only name that matters now." Underneath it, another line. "What you built will not be forgotten." I looked up, meeting his gaze. He smiled faintly. "You don't need their approval anymore, Briar. You already have something better. Proof." And for the first time since this began, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. And I was finally ready to stop proving my worth and start living it. A week passed after Grandpa's visit. The house felt different now, quieter, but not empty. I spent those days working, cooking for myself, and sleeping through the night without waking to the weight of unsent messages or rehearsed arguments. I had done what I needed to do. Then, on a Thursday morning, a cream-colored envelope appeared in my mailbox. My name was written in my mother's familiar cursive, elegant, controlled, the same handwriting she used on every Christmas card and sympathy note. Inside was an invitation printed on glossy cardstock, a family reconciliation dinner, it read in gold script. Theme, restoring the family circle. At the bottom was a handwritten note. "Let's move past all this, Briar. Come home. Love, Mom." I set the card on the table and stared at it. It was almost funny. The invitation wasn't for reconciliation. It was for control, wrapped in forgiveness they thought I was desperate for. By noon, I knew exactly how to respond. I printed one of the old family photos from my digital archive, the same one they had edited months earlier, cropping me out. I used the edited version. I slipped it into a blank card and wrote one line inside, in blue ink. "This is the family you chose. This is the version you built." Then I mailed it back to their address. No return note, no signature, just that. The next day, my phone lit up with calls. Isolde, twice. Mom, 3 times. Dad, once. I let them all go to voicemail. When I finally checked the messages, I started with Vera's. Her voice trembled, careful but venomous under the surface. "I don't know who you've become, Briar. You used to have such a kind heart. I just hope someday you realize how hurtful this all is. To your father, to your sister, to everyone who loves you." I texted back one line. "Someone who remembers." No reply came. By evening, the silence felt thicker than before. But this time, it didn't feel like punishment. It felt like proof that the truth had done its work. The next morning, while making coffee, my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. Mrs. Elkins had posted publicly, "I used to believe everything I heard. I don't anymore." Underneath, a few quiet comments followed. "Takes courage to admit that." Some people finally seeing the truth. I didn't need to guess who it was about. Within days, things started shifting around Naperville in small, visible ways. My mother was removed from the church leadership page. Her weekly women's group stopped meeting at the house. The same people who once praised her for her devotion began pulling back. Not dramatically, just with distance. The kind that speaks louder than confrontation. Word traveled fast. Isolde deleted her old Facebook posts, the ones about real family. Harlan stopped showing up at the hardware store where everyone used to stop him to chat. Their social walls were cracking, not because I destroyed them, but because they finally had to stand on their own words. Meanwhile, I was at my lawyer's office finalizing what I should have done years ago. I signed the papers that revoked every co-signature, every emergency access, every shared account that tied me to them. My lawyer, Nate, looked up and smiled faintly. "You're officially free, Briar." Free. The word felt strange, heavy in my chest, but light in the air. I left his office with a copy of the documents in a plain envelope. When I got home, I placed it on the shelf beside my unopened wine bottle, the one from the night of that dinner. The difference was, this time, it wasn't a symbol of loss. It was closure. That night, I sat on the porch as the sun went down, the sky bleeding orange into deep blue. The wind smelled like rain, and the quiet hum of cicadas filled the air. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Then the mail truck pulled up. The driver waved and handed me a small envelope postmarked Denver. I recognized the handwriting immediately, Leora's. Inside was a folded note and a Polaroid photo. In it, Leora stood in front of a small apartment building, smiling, holding a coffee mug. Her hair was messy, her eyes clear. On the back of the photo, in her neat handwriting, were 10 words. "You helped me leave." I finally breathed. "Thank you." The letter was short. "I'm sorry for how quiet I was all those years. You were right, Briar. Mom and Isolde will never see what they did, and maybe that's okay. You showed me I didn't have to stay to survive. I'm in Denver now. It's small, but it's mine. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't. You gave me the blueprint." I folded the letter carefully and tucked it back inside the envelope. For a long while, I just sat there in the fading light, the letter resting in my lap, listening to the soft hum of the neighborhood settling in for the night. I thought about all the years I spent fixing, forgiving, funding, about every time I said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. Every time I filled a silence that wasn't mine to fill. And I realized something simple. Freedom wasn't loud. It didn't need applause or revenge. It was quiet, private, peaceful. That was my kind of victory. Maybe I didn't fix everything, but I stopped being erased, and that was finally enough. The envelope from Leora still sat untouched on the end table near the front door, quietly dignified in its stillness. I hadn't moved it since the day it arrived. That morning, I had read her note 3 times, carefully, slowly, allowing every word to settle like sediment in water. I'd then placed the photograph she included gently back inside, folded the paper with reverence, and laid the envelope down where I'd see it each morning as I left. Not because I needed some sentimental token, not because I was clinging to the past, but because it was proof. Proof that someone had watched me leave and learned from it. After that, things began to slow. The pace of my life used to feel like a relentless hum, always vibrating with unspoken obligations and performance. But now, the silence was deliberate. The phone stopped ringing. The stream of voicemails evaporated. No new messages, no more invitations masked as obligations. There were no just checking in texts from women who only ever spoke in code. I didn't get unfriended, at least not in the visible sense. But I was quietly removed, extracted, like I had become inconvenient. Cut from group chats, left out of shared photos, airbrushed from the stories they told at potlucks and prayer groups. They weren't sorry. That much was clear. There was no repentance, no recognition, just embarrassment. I had disrupted the script, and for people like them, disruption wasn't something to learn from. It was something to ignore. Vera still lived in that tidy blue house in Naperville, still watered the same stubborn roses out front, the ones that bloomed early like they had something to prove. She still wore her embroidered apron to Sunday service, but she no longer led the women's ministry. That had ended quietly. No announcement, no farewell luncheon, no thanks for your service email, just a shift in tone, an unspoken agreement that she should step aside. Whether out of guilt, discomfort, or fatigue, I'll never know. But something changed. Isolde, on the other hand, was still curating her life with filters and grace quotes. Instagram snapshots of eggs Benedict brunches, captioned with Bible verses about purpose. Before, her comment sections overflowed with heart emojis and exclamation points. Lately, they were quiet. A few scattered likes, a couple polite "so proud of you" comments from work acquaintances. But the old crowd, the women who used to fawn over every latte and latte art heart, had disappeared. And Harlan? He never had much to say to begin with. Stoic, maybe. Or just withholding. Either way, the last time I saw him, he was standing in the cereal aisle, frozen in front of a wall of granola. I wasn't expecting to see him, but I recognized his posture before I even saw his face. He glanced in my direction for half a second, and then his eyes slid right past me like I was a stranger browsing a different aisle. I don't know if it was shame or pride that kept him from nodding, maybe both, but I didn't wave. I didn't need to. I had learned that being acknowledged wasn't the same as being accepted, and being remembered wasn't the same as being respected. So instead of waiting for them to return to me, I began to build something different, something truer. I didn't start big. There were no declarations, no grand gestures of healing. I simply hosted a dinner. Then another, and another. Small groups, 2, maybe 3 people, gathered around my old table, the one I had stripped of decorative centerpieces and pretensions. We ate mismatched dishes. We passed bowls without waiting for prayers that once felt scripted, and no one wore masks. One Thursday, Leora flew in from Denver. She brought a bottle of red wine and, tucked into her tote, that same Polaroid she'd sent me months before. We sat on the porch for hours, talking like we'd never left off. The night air was warm but breezy, and the stars were just visible enough to remind us how small we were, and how free. As we laughed about things that used to weigh us down, I remember looking around at the scene and thinking, the table's smaller now, but no one here is pretending. And that was enough. Months passed. Spring began to push winter's gray grip away. One morning, I found another envelope. This one hadn't been mailed. It had been slipped silently through the mail slot. My name was written in firm, elegant cursive, Clive's handwriting. He was gone. No long hospital saga, no vigil, no hospice breathing monitors, just gone. The kind of departure he would have preferred, quiet, dignified, without spectacle. Inside was a short note, written in black ink on unlined paper. His hand was still steady. I never doubted you. I only wish I'd spoken sooner. Folded with the note was a small brass key. I knew what it was the moment I saw it. His safety deposit box. That Friday, I drove to the bank. The spring air was cool enough to require a light jacket, but gentle in a way that made you want to stand still. The woman behind the counter looked up the name and offered a quiet, respectful smile. She walked me to the back, unlocked the cabinet, and let me do the rest. The key clicked in like it had been waiting for this day. Inside the box wasn't money, no stocks or deeds, no will. Just a neatly stacked pile of manila folders and a single flat box. The folders held my childhood drawings, page after page of stick horses, spaceships, family portraits with misspelled names, each one dated in his careful handwriting. Some had notes. Breyer's first horse. She wanted this one framed. This one made me laugh so hard I cried. The flat box held a photo. Just me and Grandpa. I was 8, front teeth missing, holding a first-place science fair trophy like it was the Stanley Cup. He stood behind me with one hand on my shoulder, and in the other, a half-eaten sandwich he clearly hadn't bothered to put down for the photo. On the back, he had written, "She did the work. She always did." The tears came, not from grief, but from being seen, fully, without agenda. I took the drawings home and laid them out on the living room floor, sunlight streaming in across the carpet. I sat with them in silence, feeling like I had just been given back a piece of myself I didn't realize I'd lost. I wasn't mourning anymore. I was remembering, honoring, rebuilding, not from ruins, but from truth. Even if others had forgotten me, someone had remembered me well. Weeks passed, soft and slow. One evening, I went for a walk. The trees rustled with the kind of wind you only get in the Midwest in early May, cool enough to make you tug your sleeves down, but gentle enough to make you linger. I passed by the white church on the corner, the one where they once whispered my name in prayer circles like I was someone to pity. There was a group gathered on the lawn, folding chairs in a loose circle, someone leading a soft prayer. I could hear the rhythm of their words, familiar and distant, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to. They had once prayed for me to return, to repent, to fall back in line. But I had found something better than their approval. I had found my own salvation. Maybe I wasn't invited back, but I'm finally home. Sometimes, family isn't who shares your blood, it's who sees your worth without needing you to prove it. Briar's story is a reminder that silence isn't weakness, and walking away doesn't mean giving up, it means choosing peace over performance. What about you? Have you ever had to choose yourself over family expectations? If this story spoke to something in your life, share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories just like this one.